In this second episode of Fresh Mex, we are going to make all of the supporting cast for an incredible Mexican fiesta. We're going to teach you how to make refried beans in a vegan style. We're going to teach you how to make Spanish rice, and we're going to teach you how to work with flour tortillas, corn tortillas, and we're going to work on making a few other beautiful additions to the meal. Are you ready? I love refried beans, probably more than anything else on the planet. I could probably live on them if given the opportunity. But it does require a lot of work if you're gonna make them from scratch. And if you want them to be vegan, you've got to be very, very clever. I have a lot of friends that are vegans, and I want to make sure that they can eat at my parties. So I developed a recipe for making vegan refried beans that are very, very tasty, and you're not even gonna miss the texture or the flavor of normal refried beans. We start with normal pinto beans, which you can usually get for about $1.29 a pound, dried in a Mexican mart or in bulk, maybe at a Sprouts. And what you're gonna do is 6 to 8 hours before you want to make them, you're gonna put them into a container and you're gonna cover them with 3 times the volume of water. So in other words, when I started this, the beans were at about here, and I filled the water to just about the top. Now, a normal bean, when it's dried, is about that size. After 6 hours of soaking, they usually double or even triple in size. So now that it's soaked, what we're gonna do is we're going to drain the water, we're gonna rinse the beans, and then we're gonna put them into a pot and we're gonna start them boiling and then lower to a simmer, and we're gonna give them enough time to absorb all of the moisture. You're gonna wanna put about 3 or 4 inches of water over the beans to give them enough water to absorb, and you wanna stir them every probably 10 to 15 minutes to make sure that they don't catch and that they're being given even heat. So now that we've cleaned the pinto beans, and what that means is you rinse them with cold water once or twice, and then you go through and hand pick through to make sure that all of them are clean, all of them look good, and that there aren't any rocks. There's a reason why refried beans are a labor of love. They're very labor intensive. What we're gonna do now is, now that they're clean and they're ready to go, we're gonna just cover them with water about 2 to 3 inches over the top of the beans. And then what we're gonna do is, because we're making vegetarian/vegan refried beans, we're gonna add a little bit of garlic salt to the water. I would say about 3 tablespoons worth. Lowry seasoned garlic salt makes the best. We're gonna add about 1 ounce of liquid smoke. And we're gonna add about 2 teaspoons of cumin. And that will be the initial seasoning for the beans. We're gonna put them on high. We're gonna bring it to a rapid boil, and then we're gonna lower it and we're gonna get it to simmer. And it's gonna take about 45 minutes to an hour, maybe even a little bit more, to get it so that the beans have soaked up as much of the water as they can and they're fork tender. So now that the beans have simmered to the point where the water is just slightly covering the beans, we're gonna pull the beans out and put it into a dish to be able to mash. And we're gonna reserve the liquid so that if they dry out a little bit, we have something to blend in to keep them moist and to keep the texture exactly how we like it. Now it has been simmering for about 1.5 hours, but it's totally okay to have it simmer for a little bit longer if you want to do it. The more you allow it to simmer, the more soft and tender the beans become. I like a little bit of texture, so I tend to do it after about 90 minutes. Now before I start mashing, I'm gonna add just another little sprinkle of salt, just a light coat, because during the cooking process, the salt goes into the beans, but it may not be enough to give the proper texture and flavor. Now this is just a potato masher, a hand masher. You are more than willing and capable of using a food processor if you'd like. It's faster. Or a blender, a hand mixer. I use hand tools generally. And I've only been doing it for about a minute, maybe a minute and a half. And the beans are already starting to blend beautifully. They're already starting to become a smooth and creamy texture. Now a good measurement is, if you're gonna be throwing a party, I would do about a third of a cup of beans per person. This is probably enough for about 10 to 15 servings. And the way you'll present it on the plate is with a little bit of cotija cheese crumbled over the top. Once you get it to the consistency that you want, make sure you taste it. Give it a little sample and make sure that it has the proper amount of salt and flavor. If not, you can doctor it up. Add a little bit more liquid smoke if you want. Add a little bit of cumin if you want. Add a little bit of salt if you want, or other seasonings. Perfect. So now that it is seasoned the way that I like and the texture that I like, I'm going to put it into a plate and prepare it to serve it. The next thing we're going to do is make Spanish rice, and it's really, really simple. What we're going to do is we're going to take the parboiled rice, once again, we're going to add a little bit of chicken and tomato bouillon to it. We're going to add a little bit of chicken stock and then just a touch of the jalapeno juice, and that will make the rice perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by putting the rice in. And I've got about, I want to say, 2.5 to 3 cups of rice. This should be enough for about 10 to 15 portions. We can make more, but in this case, I just want to do this rapidly. So once we've done that, we're going to add the chicken stock, an entire can, and it's just going to moisten the rice. It's not going to cover the rice to the right level. We're going to open up the chicken and tomato bouillon, and we're going to sprinkle in about 3 tablespoons, about 1 tablespoon for each cup of rice that we use. Then, once we've done that, we're going to add just a splash of jalapeno juice, maybe an ounce or 2. And then we're going to go with regular water to the 1 finger over the rice level. Now that it's perfect, what we're going to do is we're just going to plug it in and cook it. What we're going to do is twice during the cooking, we're going to go in with a spoon, a plastic spoon, and we're going to just stir it to make sure that the seasonings are sinking in all the way through all the rice. We just had the rice finished, and now we can pull it out of the rice cooker and put it directly into whatever serving dish we want. Because we use the parboiled rice, it should flake very, very easily, and you'll end up with a much more pleasant and easy to share product. Now, this is very, very plain. All we did was season it and put it in to cook. But if you would like, it's perfectly fine for you to go above and beyond and to take a little bit of onion or a little bit of roasted corn or a little bit of jalapenos, putting it into the rice as it cooks so that you get more flavor and a different look. Get creative. Make your Spanish rice the way that you want it. But there we are, fresh and perfect Spanish rice. What we're gonna do now is we're just gonna prep a little bit of vegetables to quick blacken. You don't really need it for a Mexican party, or you don't really need it for what we're doing, but I have to be honest. Sometimes when you get meats that are marinated just perfect, you can do something like a fajita taco or a fajita burrito, and with a little bit of blackened peppers, a little bit of caramelized onion, and some fresh sauteed mushrooms, it just really kicks up the flavor a little bit and it looks fantastic. People eat with their eyes, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna give them a feast for their bellies and their eyes. We're gonna take an onion that we've already started because we don't wanna waste, and we're gonna just quickly wedge the remainder of it thin so that they're ready to just quick saute. Oh, that was probably the worst thing I could show you. Never cut towards yourself, always cut away. And if you see one of the layers of the onion getting pasty or dry, take it off. You need to have that proper, grip, or else you're gonna end up cutting yourself, which I almost just did. And the onions are ready. For the pepper, it's really easy. You just cut off the top. We're gonna pop out the stem, because that's the only part that's not edible. We're gonna cut out the pith. Well, actually, you know, it is edible, but it's just not pleasant to eat. Now that we've done that, all the rest of the pepper can be used. So we're gonna slice it really thin so that they can be blackened very quickly. And they can be added to tacos or to the top of one of the dishes. Again, cut them thin because they'll take less time to cook. There'll be more to go around for the party, and people will be able to put a little bit more on their plate. This Mercer blade makes very short work of fresh produce. It's fantastic. I've had it for about, I would say, 6 years, and it's my favorite knife. For the mushrooms, all you have to do is trim the very, very tip, cut it in half, and prep. Don't feel bad. If you're not new, if you're new to cooking and you can't chop really fast, take your time. There's nothing wrong with being safe and getting familiar with yourself, your knife, and the product you're using. There's a certain Zen-like quality to cutting produce. It really kind of makes me happy. I just like the sound and the feel of knife going through vegetables. And there you have it. All the vegetables prepped and the least amount of waste. We're gonna saute them next, quick in a saute pan, and we're gonna just get them so that they're ready to be served. We've turned the burner on, and we're going to add just a little bit of vegetable oil just to coat the pan. Now, the thing that takes the longest to prepare is actually the peppers, so we're going to start with those. And we're going to talk through how to know when peppers and onions and mushrooms are done. So now that the peppers are in the pan, we're going to make sure that they're coated with the oil evenly so that they can cook nicely. If the peppers are not coated evenly with the oil, you'll have some places where it browns and other places where it just softens, and it's not going to leave a uniform flavor, color, or texture. So the peppers should be glistening all over once they're coated. And then you want to let them cook for just a minute or two without playing with them. If you are cooking with gas and it's on high, you can do it stir-fry method, which is just rapidly turning it, because they will blacken and brown very, very rapidly. But at the beginning stages of culinary arts, it's best to take things kind of slow, take it at its own pace, get used to the color cues and the smells and what it looks like as it's cooking down. The next thing that's going to take some time is the onions. Now the onions, once they soften, that's when they start to caramelize, and when they brown, they actually become sweeter and a little bit more, I want to say, soft in flavor. That's fantastic for making fajitas with or tacos. If you like a stronger, more, I want to say, spicy flavor to your onions, you can leave them raw or you can saute them lightly. But if you want it to sweeten up and to become a little bit more like, I want to say a steak onion, you want to let it get so it's browning just a little bit. Now the mushrooms only take a few seconds, because what's going to end up happening is within just a few minutes of the mushrooms being put in, the moisture is going to be let go and they're going to start sweating and becoming soft and tender. And once they change colors, there's not much more to do with the mushrooms, because they're going to start to dry and maybe start to brown or burn. So we've had the peppers going for just a minute on the action station on high, which is not as high as a stove. This doesn't have the same heat. But you'll see that they're beginning to soften. So we're about, I want to say, 3 minutes or 4 minutes away from them starting to brown just a little bit. Now that the peppers have been cooking for a little bit, you can see that they're starting to brown around the edges just beautifully. This is when they're just fine. If you want, you can cook them a little bit more well done, but for fajitas and for Mexican food, that should be just fine. Next is we're going to add just a little bit of oil to the pan. Once again, to just coat it. And we're going to put the onions in and get them rolling along. Onions will take less time than the peppers. They tend to be a little lighter, a little less fibrous, and they tend to sweat a little easier than peppers. The onions have started to brown, and they're starting to look like perfect fajita onions. This is when we'll take them off and put them to the side. And now we'll move to the mushrooms. So once again, we'll add a little bit of oil just to coat the bottom. And the second the mushrooms actually hit the hot pan, they're already starting to give off their moisture. Mushrooms are the fastest by far of any of the 3 vegetables, and all you have to do is give it about a minute and a half They'll change from a white to a light brown. And once they look like they're soft and they're cooked down a little bit, they're perfect and ready to go. The mushrooms have started to sweat, they're turning color, they're almost perfect. All we need to do is turn them a little bit, and we're ready to use them to serve. There we have it. We have a little bit of blackened peppers, a little bit of caramelized onions, and some wonderful sauteed mushrooms ready to go on the top of any of the food that we're about to serve. So we've done the rice, we've done the beans, we've done a little bit of roasted vegetables, and now it's time for the center stage. We have two competitors here for your pleasure. We have flour tortillas and we have corn tortillas. There are a lot of people that prefer one or the other. I'm going to tell you that both are fantastic, but they do have different characteristics. For instance, the flour tortilla will only take a minute or two to warm up, and it will become very easy to work with. For the corn tortilla, it's going to take a minute or two longer to cook up. But the difference is there's an incredible flavor, there's a different texture to it, and if you are gluten-free, corn tortillas are actually something that you can consume without fear of causing abdominal upset or creating discomfort for yourself. Personally, I prefer corn tortillas because I like the flavor that they have, I like the texture. There's nothing wrong with liking one or the other, but if you are quick serving, the ones that are the fastest to prepare are going to be the flour. Within about a minute and a half, this is soft, tender. When it starts to bubble up a little bit, it's ready to be pulled off and served. The corn sometimes take twice as long to prepare, but when you have a specific flavor you're looking for, or you have a sweet spot, do what makes you happy. Generally speaking, flour tortillas tend to be a little bit more expensive if you are buying for a party. Corn tends to be best when it is delivered to the store that day. We received these today. They were warm when I picked them up, and they are absolutely wonderful. What I would do for your party is cook off about 5 or 6 of each and keep them in a little warmer, and then have them coming off every few minutes. It gives somebody at the party something to do so they feel like they've got a job, and in addition to that, it means that every single taco that you are serving is fresh and hot, and that makes all the difference for your guests. Okay, so this is the end of part 2 of Fresh Mex, and we've taught you how to make Spanish rice, fresh pinto beans refried, vegan style. We've done peppers that have been quick blackened. We have caramelized onions, and we have mushrooms, and we've kind of taught you just by visual how to prepare the flour and corn tortillas. It really is very, very simple. But now it's time to close this out and get ready for the third and final installment, which is Meet the Meats. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the next episode of Fresh Food Therapy.